Hi, welcome to this Corbettmaths video. In this video, we're going to look at the video solutions to the Capture Recapture practice questions on Corbettmaths. If you need any extra help on Capture Recapture, if you go to corbettmaths.com/contents and scroll down to video number 391, there's a dedicated video tutorial there on Capture Recapture. Alternatively, you could scan this QR code. But in this video, we're going to focus on the video solutions to the practice questions, so let's get started. Okay, let's have a look at question number 1. So question number 1 says, John wants to estimate the number of fish that live in a pond, and he catches and tags 80 fish, and he returns the 80 fish to the pond. So let's call the number of fish that live in the pond to begin with n, the total number of fish, and he caught and tagged 80 of them. So 80 out of the total number were tagged. And then he returns the next day and he catches 250 fish. And out of those 250 fish, 16 are tagged. So 16 out of the 250 are tagged. So we're going to put those equal to each other and we're going to use that to work out an estimate for the total number of fish in the pond. Now what we want to do is we want to solve this equation. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two different approaches we could use. The first approach is we've got 80 divided by n. We don't want n on the denominator, so we're going to multiply both sides of the equation by n. So we're going to times by n and times by n. On the left hand side we had 80 divided by n. We're timesing by n, so I'll just leave us with 80 on the left hand side. And on the right hand side we had 16 over 250. When we times that by n, we would get 16n over 250. And let's have a look and see why. If we had 16 over 250 and we multiply that by n, which is n over 1, that would be 16 times n, which is 16n over 250. Now we want to get rid of this divide by 250, so let's multiply by 250 and multiply by 250, and that would be equal to, when we times both sides by 250, that would be equal to, the left hand side, it would be equal to 20,000. And on the right hand side we had 16n divided by 250. Whenever we times that by 250, that gets rid of the divide by 250, so we're just left with 16n. Now we want to find out what n is, so we just want to divide both sides by 16, so divide by 16 and divide by 16, and we will get 20,000 divided by 16 is equal to 1,250, and on the right hand side we had 16n divided by 16, so we've just got n. So that means n, the total number of fish in the pond, would be 1,250. This is our estimate, so our estimate for the total number of fish in the pond would be 1,250. So that's one way to do this question. Now at this point here where we had 80 divided by n is equal to 16 over 250, whenever we do capture recapture we'll have a lot of equations in that format. Now here what you'll notice is we multiply both sides of this equation by n, and then we multiply both sides of the equation by 250 to get rid of both of the denominators, and then we got 20,000 was equal to 16n. Now there's another way we can do that just really quickly using a thing called cross multiplication. So if we had a over b is equal to c over d, what we can do is we can multiply both sides by b and both sides by d, and if we get that it would be the same as just multiplying a by d, which is equal to ad, and we can multiply b by c, and that's equal to bc. So if you do a times d, that's equal to c times b. And let's just check it. Here we had 80 times 250, which is equal to 20,000, and 16 times n was equal to 16n. So if we do cross multiplication, it'll just bring us from here to here just a bit quicker. So it's up to you whichever approach you use. I like using cross multiplication because I can just sort of, it's just a little bit faster. Okay, let's have a look at question number 2. Question number 2 says, Luca wants to estimate the number of conkers in a bucket. So he wants to estimate the number of conkers in a bucket, and he marks 30 of the conkers and places them back in the bucket. So let's let the number of conkers in the bucket be called n, and he marks 30 of those conkers. So 30 out of the total number are marked. And then after he puts them back in the bucket, he then mixes all the conkers together, and then he picks out 10 conkers at random. And out of those 10 conkers, 2 were marked. So 2 out of the 10 were marked. So that's our equation, and we're going to solve it to work out an estimate for the total number of conkers in the bucket. If we multiply both sides by n, on the left hand side we would get 30 divided by n times by n would be equal to 30, and on the right hand side we had 2 tenths times by n would be equal to 2n over 10. We can then times both sides by 10, and if we do that we get 30 times 10, which is equal to 300, and on the right hand side we had 2n divided by 10 times by 10 would just leave us with 2n, and then we would then have 300 equals 2n, and divide by 2 and divide by 2, and we get the 150 equals n. So the number of conkers in the bucket, our estimate would be 150, and that's it. Now at this point here we could have used cross multiplication where we just multiplied the numerator by the over denominator and the numerator by the over denominator. So we could do 30 times 10, which is equal to 300, and 2 times n, which would be equal to 2n. So we get 300 equals 2n straight away, and then we can just solve it. Now for the rest of these video solutions I'm going to use this cross multiplication method. If you wanted to, you can do it in full if you wanted to. Either approach is totally fine. Okay, let's have a look at question number 3. Okay, question number 3. A group of scientists want to estimate the number of eels that live in a lake, and they catch and ring 800 eels. So let's let the number of eels in the lake in total be called N, and they catch and ring 800 eels. So 800 out of the total number are ringed, and then on the next day they capture 700 and 16 are ringed. So 16 out of the 700 are ringed. Now we want to estimate the total number of eels in the lake, so let's do our cross multiplication and solve this. Now remember, you can multiply both sides by n and 700 and that's totally fine, but I'm just going to use this approach. 800 times 700, 800 times 700 would be equal to 560,000. And that's equal to 16 times n, which would be equal to 16n. So 800 times 700 is equal to 16 times n. Now we've got this, we can just solve this. So we can divide by 16 and divide by 16, and that's equal to, divided by 16 is equal to 35,000. So that means our estimate for the total number of eels that live in the lake would be 35,000, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 4. Okay, let's have a look at question number 4. So question number 4 says, Isabella wants to estimate the total number of snakes on an island. So let's call that N. And on Thursday, she catches and tags 170 snakes. So 170 out of the total number are tagged. And then on Sunday, she captures 240 snakes and 15 of those are tagged. So 15, so that means that 15 out of the 240 are tagged. I've been asked to work out an estimate for the total number of snakes on the island. So here we could multiply both sides by N and then multiply both sides by 240 and then solve it. I'm going to use cross multiplication. So I'm going to do 170 times 240. So 170 times 240 is equal to 40,800, and that's equal to 15n. Now we want to find n, so we don't want this multiplied by 15, so let's divide by 15 and divide by 15. So divide by 15 and divide by 15, and that's going to be equal to, divided by 15 gives us 2,720 is equal to n. So our estimate for the total number of snakes that live on the island would be 2,720. So let's have a look at part B. Part B says, explain one assumption you've made in part A. So let's have a look and see what she done. So she went there on Thursday, she caught some snakes, she tagged them, and then she went back on the Sunday and she caught some more. Now, between Thursday and Sunday, one assumption we're making is that nothing's happening to the snakes. That maybe no one sent the snakes away from the island. I think it's St. Patrick, or no one's put a load of snakes on the island in between those times. That's one assumption we're making. Another assumption, well, she's tagged 170 snakes, and then, you know, what if they don't mingle with the rest of the snakes whenever they go back onto the island? What if, you know, the other snakes don't like the look of the tags and stay away from them? You know, so then whenever, you know, she's went back, maybe out of these 240, they were mingling with the rest of the snakes, and only 15 of them managed to get close to be, you know, caught by Isabella. You know, so that's another assumption. Or another simple one is, you know, she's tagged 170 snakes. You know, what if some of those tags have fallen off? You know, that could be an assumption that we're making, that no tags fall off, and I'm actually going to use that assumption. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, question number 5. Victoria wants to estimate the number of squirrels that live in a wood. And on Wednesday, she catches 24 squirrels. Let's call the number of squirrels in the wood N. She captures 24 squirrels, so she caught 24 squirrels to begin with. And out of the total population, N, and she tags them. And then on Thursday, she goes back and she captures 40 squirrels and 11 are tagged. So 11 out of the 40 are tagged on the second visit. So let's solve this equation. Remember, we could times both sides by N and then both sides by 40. And then we solve it that way, or we can use our cross multiplication. So I'm going to do 40 times 24, so 40 times 24 is equal to 960, and that's equal to 11 times n, 11n. Now we're going to divide both sides by 11, so divide by 11 and divide by 11. 960 divided by 11 would be equal to 87.2727 and so on, and that's equal to n. So that means n, the total number of squirrels in the wood, would be roughly equal to 87.2727 and so on. Now we're estimating the total number of squirrels that live in the wood. It's an estimate. I'm going to round this number to 87. So my estimate for the number of squirrels that live in the wood would be 87, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at question number 6. So Ivan wants to work out an estimate for the total number of fish that live in a pond. He captures X of the fish and tags them. So he captures X of the fish and tags them, and he returns those fish to the pond. On the next day, Ivan catches 200 fish, and out of those 200, 9 are tagged. And then we're told Ivan's estimate for the total number of fish in the pond is 1,200. Work out how many fish Ivan tagged X. So in this question, what we're told is actually, we're told what his estimate is. So the total number of fish that live in the pond is going to be roughly equal to 1,200. That's his estimate. Now he captures X of them and tagged them. So the number that he tagged out of the 1,200 would be equal to, and on the second visit, he caught 209 were tagged. tagged, so 9 out of the 200 were tagged. So this time we're working at x, the number that he tagged on the first visit. So again, we could multiply both sides by 1,200 and then multiply both sides by 200 and then solve it that way. Or I'm just going to do cross multiplication. 200 times x is 200x, and 1,200 times by 9 would be equal to 10,800. So we know that 200x is equal to 10,800. Let's divide both sides by 200. So divide by 200 and divide by 200. And that gives us that x is equal to 54. So that means that Ivan would have tagged 54 fish on his first visit. So let's write that down, 54. Okay, let's have a look at question number 7. So question number 7 says, Hattie wants to estimate the number of honeybees in a beehive. And on Monday, Hattie caught 840 of the honeybees, and she marked each of those honeybees and returned them to the beehive. And then on Tuesday, Hattie caught 300 honeybees and noted how many were marked. Hattie then estimates that the number of honeybees that live in the beehive is 9,000. How many of the 300 honeybees that she caught on Tuesday were marked? So in other words, on her second visit on Tuesday, how many were marked? So her estimate for the total number of honeybees in the beehive is 9,000. So that means that there's 9,000. And on her first visit, she tagged 840 of them. So on her first visit, 840 of the 9,000 honeybees were marked. And that equals, and on her second visit, she caught 300 of them. And out of those 300, so many were marked. So let's work out how many of those 300 on the second visit on Tuesday were marked. So again, we can multiply both sides here by 9,000 and multiply both sides by 300 and so on. I'm just going to cross multiply. So 840 times 300 is equal to 252,000, and that's equal to 9,000m. We're now going to divide both sides by 9,000, so divide by 9,000 and divide by 9,000. Whenever we divide by 9,000, we get that's equal to 28. So that means that 28 were marked on Tuesday. Whenever she visited on Tuesday and caught 300 honeybees, 28 of them were marked. Okay, let's look at question number 8. So question number 8 says, Chloe wants to estimate how many woodlice live in a greenhouse. So she's gone to a greenhouse, and on Saturday she went to the greenhouse and she caught 90 woodlice, and she put a little mark on each of them and returns them to the greenhouse. And then on Sunday, Chloe caught a number of the woodlice, Y, and out of those woodlice that she caught, 12 of them were marked. Chloe's estimate for the total number of woodlice in the greenhouse is 600. How many woodlice did Chloe catch on Sunday? So if we have a look at the greenhouse, her estimate for the total number of woodlice that live in the greenhouse is 600. And on Saturday, she caught 90 of them. So 90 out of the 600 were marked. And then whenever she went on Sunday, she then caught some of them. Let's call that Y. And out of those Y, 12 of them were marked. So 12 out of the Y were marked. And we want to work out Y, how many woodlice did she catch on Sunday when she went back to the greenhouse. So again, we can multiply both sides by Y, and we could multiply both sides by 600, or we could cross multiply. 90 times Y is equal to 600 times 12. So 600 times 12. And that's equal to 7,200. So 90Y equals 7,200. Now what we want to do is we want to solve this. So let's divide by 90 and divide by 90. And whenever we divide both sides by 90, we get that Y is equal to 80. So that means that whenever she went back on Sunday, she caught 80 woodlice, and that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question, question number 9. Okay, let's have a look at question number 9. So question number 9 says, Dominic has a large tub of white counters. So Dominic's got this large tub with white counters in it, and Neil has a large tub of purple counters. And 30 of Dominic's white counters are placed into Neil's tub. So that means that Neil's tub now will have lots of purple counters along with 30 white counters in there. Now Neil then takes 30 of his purple counters and puts those into Dominic's tub. So Dominic's tub has lots of white counters along with 30 purple ones in there. Now Dominic goes to his tub, which is the one that's got lots of white counters along with 30 purple ones, and he randomly selects 100 counters from his tub. So it's quite a large sample, and 5% of the counters are purple. So that's 5 out of 100, which is 5%. So that's 5% purple. So 5% of his sample is purple, and that means that the rest 95% would be white. And because the sample is quite large, we're going to assume that that means that in his tub in total, that 5% of them were purple and that 95% of them were white. And then in terms of Neil, Neil goes to his tub and he selects 50 of his counters at random, and 49 of the 50 are purple. So 49 out of the 50 are purple. Now if we double both of those, the numerator and denominator, we get 98 out of 100, which is 98%. So 98% of his sample are purple, and that means that 2% is white. And that means that if we assume, because the sample is quite large, if we assume that that means that out of his big tub to begin with, that 98% of his counters were purple and 2% were white. And then we're told that all the counters are placed in one tub. Work out the estimate for the ratio of white counters to purple counters in the tub. We'll come back to those bits in a minute. Let's focus on each person's tub to begin with, because we know roughly the percentage of each colour in each one. So for Dominic, it's 5% purple and 95% white. And for Neil, it's 98% purple and 2% white. Now, if we go back to Dominic's tub, we know that 5% of them are purple. And we know that in his tub, he's got 30 purple counters because Neil put 30 purple counters in Dominic's tub. So 5% is equal to 30 counters, 30 purple counters. So 5% is 30 counters. Now, if we can work out what 100% is, we can work out how many counters are in Dominic's tub. So 5% is equal to 30. What we can do is we can divide both of those by 5. So we can divide by 5 and divide by 5. So divide by 5 and divide by 5. So that means that 1% is equal to 6. And then if we times by 100 and times by 100, we get that 100% is equal to 600 counters. So our estimate is that inside of Dominic's tub, there's 600 counters. So there's 600 in total. So 600 in total. And obviously 5% of them are purple, and that's equal to 30. So there's 30 purple in his tub. And that 95% of them are white, so that'll be the rest. And if we take the 30 away from 600, that's equal to 570 white. So in Dominic's tub, our estimate is that he'd have 30 purple and 570 white. And you can check that by working out 5% of 600 and 95% of 600, and that should be equal to 30 and 570. So that's Dominic's tub. Now let's consider Neil's tub. So in Neil's tub, we know that he had 98% purple and 2% white. Now his tub was all purple counters to begin with. He took out 30 and then 30 white counters were put in. So this 2% white would be equal to 30 counters, 30 white counters. Now, if we know what 2% is, we can work out what 100% is, because we know that 2% is equal to 30 counters, 30 white counters. If we divide by 2 and divide by 2, so divide by 2 and divide by 2, we get that 1% will be equal to 15. And if we times by 100 and times by 100, we will get that 100% is equal to 1,500. So altogether in Neil's tub, our estimate is that there would be 1,500 counters. And if 30 of them are white, the rest of them must be purple. So if we take away 30 from 1,500, that would be equal to 1,470 purple counters. So if he's got 30 white counters, he would have 1,470 purple counters. And you can check that if we worked out 98% off the 1,500, that should be equal to 1,470. Okay, and then we're told that all the counters are placed in one tub, so that's the 600 from Dominic's and the 1,500 from Neil. So altogether there'll be 2,100 counters in that tub, our estimate. And in terms of the colours, there would be in total, there'll be 1,500 purple, adding together these two numbers, and there'll be 600 white. So that's our estimate. And the question says, work out an estimate for the ratio of white counters to purple counters in the tub. So let's work out how many white counters there'll be in total altogether in that big tub. So there'll be 570 plus 30 is equal to 600. So let's write that down. So just written down, the total white would be 570 plus 30 is equal to 600. Now in terms of the total purple, that would be total purple. It's going to be equal to 30 plus 1,470. Just go up and check. It's equal to 30 plus 1,470, and that's equal to 1,500. Now we've been asked to work out an estimate for the ratio of white to purple, so that's going to be 600 to 1,500. And let's cancel this down. So if we cancel down this ratio, let's divide both of them by 100, so that's 6 to 15, and let's divide both of them by 3, so that'll be 2 to 5. So our estimate for the total number of white counters to purple counters in the tub would be 2 to 5. And that's it. Okay, let's have a look at our next question. Okay, let's have a look at question number 10. So question number 10 says, the scientist wants to work out an estimate for the number of foxes that live in a region. And on Monday, she locates and tags some foxes. And on Tuesday, she returns and locates 10 more foxes than she had on Monday. She notices that 5 of the foxes are tagged. The scientist works out an estimate for the total number of foxes that live in the region, and she notices the number of foxes that she had tagged on Monday was an eighth of her estimate for the total number of foxes in the region. Work out how many foxes live in the region. So let's start off by calling the number of foxes she tagged on Monday Y to begin with. On Tuesday, she returned and located 10 more foxes than she had on Monday, so that'll be Y plus 10, and 5 of those are tagged. The scientist then works out an estimate for the total number of foxes that live in the region. She notices that the number of foxes that she tagged on Monday, this number, was an eighth of her estimate for the total number of foxes that live in the region. So if we times this by 8, we'll find her estimate for the total number of foxes that live in the region. So 8 times Y would be 8Y. So we've now got some information. We can then write that as an equation. So on Monday, she tagged Y out of the 8y foxes altogether. So out of the total, she tagged y out of the total population. So that's y over 8y. And that's equal to, and on Tuesday, she caught y plus 10. And 5 of them were tagged. So that means that 5 out of the y plus 10 would be equal to y out of the 8y. So in other words, y over 8y is equal to 5 over y plus 10. Now if we just solve this, we can hopefully find y, and then that would be how many she's located on Monday, and then we can times it by 8 to work out how many foxes live in the region, our estimate. So let's then solve this. So we could multiply both sides by 8y, and we can multiply both sides by y plus 10. Alternatively, we could cross multiply. So y multiplied by y plus 10, let's write that down, y bracket y plus 10 is equal to 8y times 5, and 8y times 5 would be 40y. So just cross multiply. We could multiply both sides by 8y, and that would give us y equals 40y over y plus 10, and then if we multiply both sides by y plus 10, we would get y bracket y plus 10 equals 40y. So that would work as well. Now let's expand our bracket. So y times y is y squared, y times 10, so that'd be plus 10y, and that's equal to 40y. So we want to solve this, so we've got y squared plus 10y equals 40y. Well, let's bring all the y's to one side, so that'll be if we take away 40y from both sides, so take away 40y and take away 40y, that would give us y squared, and then we had 10y and we've taken 40y away from it, so it'll be minus 30y is equal to 0. Now we've got a quadratic equals 0, we can factorize and solve it. So let's factorize it. Let's just write out again, y squared minus 30y equals 0. So to factorize this, I'm just going to take the y out, so y bracket, and then dividing both of these by y will give us y minus 30 is equal to 0. Now remember, if two things multiply together to give you 0, that means that either one of them could be 0. So either y is equal to 0, or to make this bracket equal to 0, y would be equal to 30, because 30 take away 30 is equal to 0. So either y equals 0 or y equals 30. So there are two possible solutions. Now in this question, it wouldn't really make sense if y is equal to 0, because that means you'd caught 0 foxes on Monday. It means the total population is 0. That doesn't really make sense. So if y is equal to 30, if we go back up and look at the question, that means that on Monday she caught 30 foxes. It means that on Tuesday she returned in those 10 more foxes. That would have been 40 altogether she located, and 5 of them were tagged. And her estimate for the total number of foxes that live in the region was 8y, so that's 8 times 30, and 8 times 30 is equal to 240. And that means if we check an 8 for that, if we divide that by 8, that's equal to 30. That means her estimate for how many foxes live in the region was 240. So let's write that down, 240. And that's it. So how many foxes live in the region? 240. Okay, and that's it. So these have been the video solutions to the Capture Recapture practice questions on Corbettmaths. If you need any extra help on Capture Recapture, there's a video 391 on Corbettmaths, and that's a video tutorial there on Capture Recapture. I really hope you found this video useful. If you have found it useful, please like it, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, and all the best. Cheers. Bye.